if we can't raise that ceiling and we can't pay the bondholders, the people that like have invested in U.S. debt, basically our credit rating goes down the tubes. Basically, we don't trust U.S. Debt anymore. People stop buying it. And so what do they do if they stop buying U.S. debt? Well, they put the money somewhere else. And if they stop buying, just like we talked about earlier, when people are buying lots of treasury bonds because it's better than the stock market, the value of those bonds goes down.
Welcome to the Bar Down Investing Show. Here are your hosts, Kyle Wilson and Jay Scott.
Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Bar Down Investing Show. I am Kyle Wilson, still Ashley's husband, and once again, I have my good buddy, best buddy, Mr. Jay Scott here. How's it going, Jay?
Well, hey there. I like that more informal intro there. I like that.
Instead of my drolling out, or I can be, hi, everybody.
Congratulations on a good win last weekend. Although, I guess listening to this is actually after the next weekend. We're recording.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're rolling to the Super Bowl, so this is going to come out next Tuesday. And so you're going to be talking about them beating the 49ers. So it's you might as well just say it. Congratulations.
Congratulations to the Eagles on your Super Bowl berth.
Yeah, thank you very much. You got any cool check-ins or wins for us to discuss?
Well, this is where I talk about investments. And so everybody knows I'm pretty transparent. I don't just talk about the good stuff. I'm going to talk about an investment that may be going bad right now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
not Tesla?
No, not Tesla. This is a cautionary tale. So I invest in businesses. I do some angel investments, and I invested in a business probably about 6 months ago. And normally when I invest in a business, I get like these quarterly updates or monthly updates from the founder, and got the first one after my investment and haven't heard anything in a few months. So I've sent him a couple emails to follow up and just say, hey, how's the company going? Getting close to releasing a product. What's going on? And I got ghosted. Not responding. So I'm hoping that this isn't an FTX type scam where I lost my money, but somebody that actually knew a little bit. And so I'll keep everybody updated, but be careful when you invest out there. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who to trust. Well,
you always factor in a little bit of possibility of complete loss when you're doing angel investing, but it's still not fun to go through it.
Yeah, you don't want to be ghosted. So hopefully he'll get in touch with me, and I'll have a good update next week.
Well, hopefully you have some better news for our podcast scorecard then, and starting off with some somber news there.
So for the scorecard, first I need to say, so anybody that didn't listen to the end of our episode last Tuesday, you're going to be disappointed, because at the very end of that episode, I said, if there's anybody listening to the end of this episode, anybody still here, shoot me an email and you get a free signed copy of my book. First person that does that. And we had somebody who literally at 2:30 in the morning this was released, who listened to the end and sent me an email. And then we've had like 7 other people in the last 48 hours who've listened all the way through. So thank you to everybody that's listened all the way through. I'm sending books to a few of those first couple people. And Dustin Strom. Dustin, you were the first at 2:30 a.m. So thank you for listening.
2:30, wow.
Yeah, it's impressive, people listening to the end. And now they have even more incentive to do so, because who knows what's going to happen at the end of each episode.
I kind of want to know what he was doing at 2:30 listening to our podcast.
He couldn't wait. He wanted to be the first to hear it. In terms of our scorecard for our podcast, we're up to 78 subscribers on YouTube. Hit that, smash that subscribe button if you're listening. We've gotten 3 reviews on Apple Podcasts, and we're almost up to 1,000 total downloads. So huge numbers here.
Yeah, and I've only started doing 1 per week now, so those are good numbers, because I used to be doing 10 just to boost them up.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, perfect. That's
How about The Rock?
Great update. Now, we're on to The Rock.
Yeah.
And so the headline that I saw the other day was fans were trolling The Rock over the fact that he was too old because he does this XFL thing. I don't know if you've been following what the XFL thing is, but he had this challenge when they were doing the XFL training, and he backed out of a one-on-one challenge with one of the XFL athletes. So people are saying the Rock's getting old.
Well, I just looked because I had no idea how old The Rock was. I was thinking, probably early 40s. Turns out he's 50 years old.
It's crazy, huh?
I mean, I didn't look like that when I was 50.
I hope I look half as good as I don't even look as good as him now, and I'm not even 40. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah, but so he's doing his thing with the XFL. We'll see how that works out. He's banking on the fact that people want to watch football year round. So it's we'll see how that turns out.
So what exactly is he doing as part of the XFL?
Well, so I don't know how much you want to get into the weeds of it, but the XFL was actually started back with Vince McMahon back in like 2000. Well, no, it was started back in 2011, I think, if I remember correctly. And then like Vince McMahon, like the WWE guy, bought it in like 2018, and they launched in 2020. And like literally just as like the pandemic happened. And so they only played like a few months, and then they had to shut down for the pandemic, and then they went bankrupt. So The Rock went out and bought it for like something crazy low, like $15 million for the entire program. And he's rebooting it. So it's coming out this year. And, with him, with his star power and his connections and everything, I'm sure it's going to have some sticking power, but it starts literally right after the NFL ends. So it's for all those people who are jacked up after the Super Bowl and had a great NFL season, they could just roll right into the XFL and keep watching football.
Well, I'm excited to see if I even have a team around here.
I didn't even check that. I don't know if Philly does or not, but we'll see. I'll let you research that on your own time. Let's get to some real headlines here. People are always talking about the Treasury. Treasury yields have fallen as investors weigh the latest earning results. You got any comments on that one?
Yeah, so what that means for anybody that's listening, that just sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook. Basically what we're seeing is that some big companies, Microsoft being the most recent, have announced some not so good earnings for the last quarter, and it's driving interest rates, or bond rates. So in this case, the 10-year Treasury bond is falling. And so what does one have to do with the other? Well, typically if companies start to do bad, if the stock market starts to get soft, if people are concerned about investing in things like Microsoft and the stock market in general, where are they going to go? They're going to take money out of the market and they're going to put it in like Treasury bonds, 10-year Treasury bonds, which are super safe. And if everybody puts their money in bonds, then there's so much supply that the value of those bonds fall. So the yields, the returns that we get from those bonds fall. And that's what we're starting to see, is that investors are starting to get a little bit weary of the stock market, starting to get a little bit weary of tech companies and other big companies. They're starting to move their money into bonds. And so that's what it means when we start to see these bond yields fall. And so it could be a precursor to a recession. And so it's something to keep our eyes on, but it could also be a good thing for people in the real estate industry, because when Treasury yields fall, typically mortgage rates tend to fall a little bit as well. So it could be a good spot for us as real estate investors if we're looking for lower mortgage rates.
Yeah, we're in an interesting time now because all those things that you're discussing typically are the biggest changes to the Treasury. But right now, with what's going on with not knowing when the Feds are going to pause and what the next interest rate hikes are, they're almost overshadowed. So we kind of don't look at those typical precursors to Treasury changes because everyone's just waiting for the pause right now, right? We're expecting once the pause happens, then Treasury rates are going to drop down because now we know we're not going to 7%. We know where the end is. But it's interesting to watch all the different effects because, especially as you said, being in real estate, that Treasury rate can really affect what kind of mortgages we're getting. I don't know if there's much more to discuss on that to move to issues list. So I'll keep going through the headlines. ChatGPT still in the headlines, still making waves. But as far as real estate, it's pushed over to real estate. with articles like how ChatGPT could change commercial real estate. And people are talking about brokers, things like brokers who their kind of special sauce is they're able to take each individual client and tailor results to their exact needs. A client will come in, they'll want an area, they'll want price range, they'll want all these specific things. And they might have 15 different things, but now with this AI software and all these different things, that you could probably just start putting all of those requirements into an AI bot, and it'll spit out results for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So people that aren't familiar with how ChatGPT works and other AI bots like that work, basically they've got this training set of data, and they go through and they absorb all of this data, and then the people that run the bot can kind of hand tune it. They can basically get the bot or the AI to spit out certain types of content or spin content in a certain way. They can kind of tune the results that you're likely to get. And so I have a feeling that moving forward, what we're going to start to see is, we're going to have ChatGPT and all these other bots out there that kind of do generic stuff, like they end up as search engines. Microsoft just made a $10 billion investment into ChatGPT. So you can expect it's probably going to get rolled into the Microsoft search engine and all that. But I think the more interesting use cases is when we take these engines and we apply them to a very specific problem. We pull in lots of data from a very proprietary set of data, and maybe that's something like real estate listings or something like that. And then we hand tune them so that we make it so that it's really, really good at performing that one task as opposed to just general search stuff. And what you get is you get an engine that's like as good at whether it's writing real estate copy as you could possibly expect, as good as writing legal briefs, whatever it is. And so I think it's going to be a risk to a lot of industries, not just real estate, but anything where you actually have to write content, write copy. But real estate, certainly we do a lot of that. So I see it as a big risk.
Yeah, just think of Zillow. You have all the different sliders and things you can input, but think of if they had hundreds of inputs that you could put in there to fine tune your results and find exactly what you wanted. So it'll be interesting the next couple of years. It seems there's a lot of investment going into that, not just ChatGPT, but AI in general. So it'll be interesting to see how that all turns out. The other big headline that you're seeing everywhere is about the debt ceiling. And so I have an article where the New York real estate pros are fearing interest rate spikes because of the debt ceiling fight.
Yeah, so basically the concern there is that if the U.S. doesn't raise the debt ceiling, basically the debt ceiling is the maximum amount of currency that the U.S. can produce at any given time. We basically need Congress's approval to raise that ceiling. If we can't raise that ceiling and we can't pay the bondholders, the people that like have invested in U.S. debt, basically our credit rating goes down the tubes. Basically, we don't trust U.S. Debt anymore. People stop buying it. And so what do if they stop buying U.S. debt? Well, they put the money somewhere else. And if they stop buying, just like we talked about earlier, when people are buying lots of treasury bonds because it's better than the stock market, the value of those bonds goes down. But what happens when people stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds?
Well, let's not get too ahead of our skis here, because that's one of those things. That's the headlines. Right. The headlines say, oh, what if we don't pay? What if we, like all these things. And that's, I don't know. I think we got a long way to go before we start. It's kind of a sensational headline grabber to get you to click onto it. But
this is an interesting conversation. I think, I would love to talk about this more.
All right,
let's see what else we have. Maybe we'll move this to.
Well, I only got one more. So the last one is one of the big rises right now with the interest rates getting so high is the mortgage rate buy downs. So there's such a thing where you can basically prepay a reduction in interest rates. So what sellers are doing right now is, hey, I know you got to pay a 6% mortgage right now. That's too high. What if I pay to bring that down to 5? Why don't instead of giving you a credit at closing, I will take that money and I'll pay down your mortgage. So it's kind of a way of reducing people's mortgage payments and allowing maybe more buyers to get into the market.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is, let's say the average seller, and I haven't seen this article and I don't know what the numbers look like, but throw out some numbers. Let's say the average seller is contributing $5,000 to the buyer to pay down their points. Essentially, it's the same thing as the buyer dropping their price by $5,000. Now, obviously, the benefit to the seller dropping their price by $5,000. Obviously, the benefit is the seller's actually giving them cash. They don't have to finance that, but it's the equivalent to the house selling for $5,000 less in that case. And so, let's say we're talking about a $250,000 house. If we're basically giving $5,000 over, that's the equivalent of a couple percent decrease in the house price. So it's going to look like a $250,000 sale, but it's really closer to the equivalent of a $245,000 sale. So we're basically manufacturing an increase in the sale prices of our houses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's a very rational way of thinking of it, but the problem is that there are so many people out there that they base their house price purchases on just the monthly payment. How much is this going to cost me every month? Whether they're comparing it to rent or whether that's just what their budget is, and so something like this might emotionally change things for someone who, okay, this house, I can't afford this house, but all of a sudden my monthly payment goes down. They're more willing to kind of jump into that. But I see it as a kind of a temporary thing that people are just trying to scramble to make house purchases work. I don't see it as a huge change into it's going to really move the needle much on the whole housing market.
No, I don't think it's going to move the needle, but it could skew like our perception of values, and so values could be dropping, and we might not recognize it because it's really just the seller handing over some cash to the buyer and propping up the sale price.
Yep, same thing as concessions on rents.
Yep.
All right, so you want to get into this debt ceiling thing?
Yeah, let's make that our issue because I like that topic.
All right, let's move into this. Is the debt ceiling to me? It's just one of those. It's U.S. politics at its worst. Let's be honest. Like it's one of those things where I don't know if there's any other country who has this, because every other country, if you look at Canada, UK, all of these countries, when they talk about debt ceilings, it's a discussion that goes hand in hand when they set the budget. And like the same people are creating the budgets as are setting the debt ceiling. The Congress has the power of both. And yet we do the budget, we do the yearly budget, and people can call it, whoever the president at the time, Biden right now, it's Biden's budget, but Biden doesn't set the budget. He can propose something, and at the end of the day, Congress is the one who's actually hashing out the details. So it's their budget. And then all of a sudden it comes to like the debt ceiling and everyone acts all shocked. Like, oh, how are we having to remove this debt ceiling again? Well, you did this budget. So it's not a problem when there's no change in power, but the problem that we're getting into now is we had a midterm election and there was a change in power in between the time that the budget was set and the debt ceiling came up for renewal. And so now basically they're just using this as a bargaining chip to try and get some reduction of spending. And they say reduction of spending, but whenever you see these bills, it'll be like, okay, we gave this reduction of spending, and then tacked on the end of the bill, it'll be like, but also South Carolina oil drilling credits got a 5% boop or something. Like it's just politics at its worst, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. I mean, Congress passes a budget and then acts all surprised when they actually need the money to fulfill that budget. And so what does this mean in terms of what we can expect? Well, it looks like we have so the Treasury kind of stepped up and said, we're gonna backstop this. There's some stuff we can do to ensure that there's enough
extraordinary measures.
Extraordinary measures. There's stuff we can do to make sure that the government doesn't shut down, even though technically we're past that deadline for the debt ceiling. And they've said we can fund the government. We can make sure everything keeps going until June 15th. So at this point, we have another few months of hearing about the debt ceiling. I think it's unlikely that we're going to get any resolution. The Democrats are going to posture, the Republicans are going to posture. Maybe there's this game of chicken that goes on to see who blinks first. But at the end of the day, both sides recognize that they can't gamble with our economy. They can't gamble with the fact that the U.S. has the reserve currency and the most stable debt and investment on the planet. And so at the end of the day, this will get resolved, but it may not get resolved until June 14th.
And that's what always happens, right? It's no time like the last minute. And, these extraordinary measures, from my understanding, it's just basically there's some investments in social programs and stuff like that basically Yellen's pulling from and has to get back funded once she gets the approval to raise the debt ceiling. And it's such a tricky thing. Like we've gone through this numerous times, right? Like it's not the first time the debt ceiling has ever like expired. It's just a lot of times it just gets moved up and we keep going on with our day. But back in like 2011, so this article is talking about, okay, how is it going to, like, could it potentially crush interest rates and send this death spiral? And you see these articles about, the US government losing their AAA bond rating and all of these different things. And so when we went through this back in 2011, they went right to the brink, same thing. They actually had the minutes from, I believe it was the Fed meeting, and they came right out and basically said, if we didn't have the money to pay all of our debts, which is what we're talking about, then they would prioritize their actual debt. So when you talk about a budget, it might be good to step back. When you talk about a budget, the U.S. government has social programs, all of these different things, Social Security, Medicare, all these things that they have to fund, schools. And so they obviously have a list of priorities. And one of those things is they have to pay their debts too. And right now, cost of debt's going up. The bond yields are going up, so the cost of them paying those yields is going up. And so when you go back to 2011, once you don't have enough money to pay all of your debts, it's just like any other company or any other person. You got to start prioritizing. Are you going to prioritize rent, food, and then over Netflix? So which bill aren't you going to pay? And they basically came out in 2011 and said they are going to pay their debts first. And then it's going to be social programs after that. So when we talk about, losing their credit rating, I don't see that happening. Like, even worst case scenario, if we do quote unquote default, I don't see the credit rating happening because they're going to continue to pay their debts.
I think the credit rating actually dropped in 2011 during the I mean, it was temporary and it returned to like AAA rated, whatever it is, but it dropped temporarily back in 2011. So that's not completely unheard of. But yeah, I think the bigger risk is just these extraordinary measures and how it impacts a lot of people. So I remember back in 2011, I have friends that work for the government. A good friend of mine is in the Army Corps of Engineers. And I remember back in 2011 where he got moved down to a 4-day work week. And so basically he had to voluntarily give up 20% of his pay. And then his pension stopped getting funded. And it all got retroactively paid back after it got fixed and we raised the debt ceiling. But I remember him saying that he had people on his team that were literally not getting paid as much money, which meant if they were having trouble paying their bills, I mean, the bank doesn't care when you say, hey, I'm getting furloughed from my government job. Don't worry, it's all going to come back next month or the month after when they raise the debt ceiling. I can't pay my mortgage this month. The bank's not going to be, okay, that's no problem, just pay us next month. I mean, these can cause real problems for people that are not getting their money. And so, yeah, this will get fixed. It's just a question of how many people are going to get hurt in the process and what it's going to look like. I mean, from a reputation standpoint, what it's going to look like for the U.S., because there are a lot of countries out there right now that would love to see the U.S. dollar fail, that would love to see our economy fail, that would love to see us get downgraded. And so we can't really give them an opening to kind of start weakening the reputation we have.
Yeah, it's you bring up an interesting point in the sense that we might not lose it just as far as credit rating on our bonds, but at the same time, we we're in this situation because we just continue to spend more money than we make. Like the U.S. government takes in money from taxes and other sources, and so that's basically, if you look at it like a business, that's their income. They're bringing it in, and their expenses are constantly higher than their income. And we just continue to do that, and we basically paper over it. We create more debt, and we print money, and we just continue on like everything's fine. And eventually that's has to come to a head, right? Like you can't just continue to spend more money than you make and expect nothing to come out of it. But the problem is that I'm no politician, but I also know that if one side's promising, well, we're going to give you all these social things, we're going to give you this, give you that, and then the other person's saying, well, we're going to balance the budget, we're going to reduce our deficit, you guys are going to have to reduce your spending a little bit, things are going to be a little bit tough, but we're going to get the country back in order. Yes, I would love that. You would probably love that, because it lends more to long-term stability for our country, and that's what we invest in all these things. But if you look at the average person, just 9-to-5 job, who maybe has a 401k and doesn't pay attention to these things, who are you going to vote for?
Yeah, I mean, there's a large percentage of people out there that weren't alive the last time we had a balanced budget. And basically it was back during the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton, back in the late 90s. And I read somewhere recently, and I don't remember this because I guess I wasn't following it as closely back then, but apparently going into 2000, just before the election in 2000, there was an estimate that based on the trajectory we had with like balancing the budget and actually like paying off debt, the expectation was by 2010, so 10 years, we were going to reduce the debt by $6 trillion. Obviously, that didn't happen, and early 2000s came along, and we went negative again, and then 2008 came along, and we started printing money like unbelievably. So it didn't happen, but it's just crazy to think that the last time we had a balanced budget was over 20 years ago, and it's not a bigger topic of conversation anymore. We basically just accept that we're going to run a deficit every year, and it's just a question of how much and for how long. And yeah, at some point we need to do something about this, but it seems like nobody's really thinking about it other than using it as a political tool to kind of change the balance of power.
Yeah, I don't see it as an imminent threat, as to, when you talk about potentially the U.S. losing dollar reserve status and their credit rating and all those different things. But it is, when you talk about like, what are my kids going to, what's their life going to look like in 20 years, and what's the budget going to look at that time, and what's, our debt to GDP going to look at that time, and it is an issue. But I hate proposing problems without solutions. But if we have 4-year cycles where it's all about, politicians, all they care about is getting reelected, then I don't see anybody really fixing this.
Yeah, and I think it boils down to, before you can fix this problem, you have to fix the bigger problem of people don't really trust how the government's spending our money. And I'm not going to get political. I mean, whatever your thoughts are on the military and spending trillions of dollars there, whatever your thoughts are on social programs and spending hundreds of billions of dollars there, it's until we can come to an agreement on what our priorities are, what the government should be spending money on, we're not really going to come to consensus on how we get things under control. And so at some point, I think there's going to need to be something bad that happens, and whether that be something like this fight over the debt ceiling that doesn't get resolved. And again, I think this will get resolved. I'm 99.
Social Security, insolvency.
So something's going to happen where it's really going to force us to have these hard discussions. And until that happens, I think we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think last numbers I saw, I think Social Security might be insolvent by 2035, which isn't that far away. Yeah. So at some point they got to discuss things like that. But just like if I was a politician and I had the opportunity to bring it up now or just push it on to the next guy, what would you do?
Yeah, I'd love to think that if I was elected, I wouldn't care about my legacy as much as I did the legacy of the country, and I wouldn't care about getting reelected in 4 years as much as I cared about the country being in a better place in 4 years. But I guess that's why people like me don't don't put in the time, the energy, and the money to run for.
Well, and that's
for
why
president.
everyone has to go back to what was that drunk real estate episode where you need 100,000 likes and you'll run for president.
100,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel, and I'm running for president in 2024.
Yeah, there you go. And he'll fix the whole fix the country, not just the economy. He'll fix the whole country.
Smash that subscribe button.
Perfect. Well, great. You got anything on the to-dos list coming up for events or things that people should pay attention to?
We had a really good Sarasota event last weekend. We did a couple networking events in Sarasota last weekend, which we had two people that drove down from Atlanta, 8-hour drives to come down and to meet me and the team. We had one guy that flew in from Minnesota. Thanks, Hung. Really appreciate you flying in from Minnesota. That was awesome. And we're going to be doing some more networking type events around the country over the next few months. So February is going to be Atlanta. So if you're in Atlanta, sign up for our event there. And then in Houston in March, we're going to be doing a big property walk event. So it'll be a networking event. It'll also be an educational event. Get to walk some of our properties with us, learn about multifamily investing. So if you want to learn about Atlanta in February or Houston in March or any other cities we're going to be visiting over this year, sign up for my newsletter. Good pitch for my newsletter. Sign up for my newsletter, bardowninvestments.com/newsletter, and you'll get all the information about where we're going to be visiting. But great to get to actually meet some people out there.
Perfect. Well, how would you rate this thing? How'd you think it went?
What did I say last week? Was it like an 8.93?
It was like 8.9. Yeah, it was almost a 9.
Yeah, this one was even better. I'm going to go for an 8.94 this week.
Boy. Wow. We're always improving. I see.
Yep.
I think we still got some work to do. I'm going to put it at an 8.0.
Another 8.0. At least we're consistent.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and we don't have to make any comments to why we rated it. Great. How you want to sign this one off?
I need another quote. You got the quotes. Give me the quote.
So I don't have the author of this quote, but Jay and I, what people have to know is Jay and I both actually invest in horses. And when I say I invest, my wife rides horses, and I put money into it. We do buy horses that we turn around and sell for profits. But I was lamenting about how much horses were costing to one other older gentleman who'd been doing it for a while. And he turned to me and he said, well, you know the best way to make $1 million in horses? And I said, no, what? He said, start with 2 million.
Yeah, it's funny because it's true.
Yeah. So anyway, my wife's down in Ocala, Florida right now trying to sell some horses. So send me good mojo about horse selling.
Yep. And anybody, again, I'll say this, one more event type thing. If you're in Las Vegas the next couple days, so literally today, tomorrow, and Thursday, if you're watching this the day it comes out, and you should be, let Ashley Wilson know she's in Vegas for NMHC next week or this week.
That's right. You're not going though. You backed out.
I am not going. I backed out. Turns out it was good because I actually have an important family obligation that came up. So timing actually worked out well.
Okay. You'll leave that on that depressing note. Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone listening to the end. We don't have any books to give away, so joke's on you on this one for listening all the way.
But maybe next time.
But maybe next time.
And
you
it may
never
be
know.
the middle, so don't think you can just skip to the end.
Okay. Well, thanks again for everyone for sticking it out. I'm Kyle, and I'm here with my best buddy again, Jay, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, everybody.